plena, Dominus benedictus in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostre. Amen.
Three people, a pope, a religious, a lay entrepreneur, who we believe the will of God calls to respond together and each in his own way to the great challenge of the time. For our founder, they are references, inspiration, collaborators, friends. They know and support each other. The three Leos must face the transformations and problems of society in the second half of the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution, albeit at different speeds in the various European countries, radically changes the means of production and the way of life. A new class emerges in society, the workers. Often migrants in their own country, they have no roots where they live and work. Their living conditions seem to be ignored by most politicians. The work of children, the absence of insurance, working hours, the inability to organise themselves. Liberal capitalism, with its belief in the laws of the market, ignores the realities of men, women and children who are regarded as commodities and rejects any regulation of working or production conditions. While the dissatisfaction of the new class of workers grows, collectivist socialism increasingly offers itself to them as a response to their needs. It promises a new society in which the equality of all is effectively achieved, both at the political level and at the economic level. The Catholic Church seeks a response. At first, this is through an increase in charitable works. Then circles of social study are created, and gradually the first encyclical is prepared that deals with these serious social questions, Rerum Novarum, published in 1891 by Leo XIII. Leo Dehon and Leo Armel meet for the first time in 1873 in Nantes, during the Congress of Catholic Workers' Organisations. Dehon is impressed by the capital report on the work of the factory by the entrepreneur Armel. The latter, in 1880, only 2 years after the founding of the Congregation of the Oblates, asked for some priests for the holiday period. Starting in 1887, the priests of the Sacred Heart of Jesus assume the chaplaincy in the Val des Bois factory. But who is Leo Armel? Born in 1829, in 1853 he takes over the direction of the spinning mill, founded by his father, Jacques-Joseph Armel, in the Reims region of northern France. Animated by profound faith, he tries to Christianize the factory. With the help, among others, of the handmaids of the Sacred Heart and the Dehonians, he founds various associations of religious edification, builds houses for the workers, introduces various insurances, and finally makes the workers participate in the administration of the factory itself. His motto, the good of the worker, with the worker, for the worker, never without him, and even more strongly, never against him. For decades, the Dehonians serve as chaplains in the Val des Bois factory. From 1887, Dehon establishes a community in the factory, with Father Charcosset as superior. Towards the end of the 1880s, Dehon sends seminarians to Val des Bois during the summer to gain concrete experiences in pastoral care with the workers. Dehon is then involved in the summer social study sessions that every year gather clerics and laity in Val-des-Bois to discuss current social issues. In November 1891, in agreement with Armel, he writes a letter to Pope Leo XIII, making a proposal to train priests especially consecrated to the apostolate of these larger worker agglomerations. He proposes in this letter that the priests of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, thus also responding to the requests of another Brazilian industrialist from Camaragibe, should train their students both in Rome and in Val-des-Bois to be prepared for an apostolate that, so far, no congregation has taken on as a special ministry. Leo Armel is a layman, but here, as in many other initiatives, Dehon is able to motivate and collaborate with the laity on the social question. Leo Dehon is part of a generation of Catholics who faced the workers' question in the second half of the 19th century. His concrete social initiatives and his involvement in the studies of the problems that emerged with the Industrial Revolution prepare the way that leads to Pope Leo XIII's encyclical Rerum Novarum in 1891. The Pope had already expressed himself through various encyclicals on what he calls modern errors. When Leo XIII receives Leo Dehon in audience in 1888, the Pope entrusts Dehon with this task: preach my encyclicals, they fight contemporary errors. 3 years later, with Rerum Novarum, Pope Pecci tackles a workers' question directly for the first time and denounces the conditions of undeserved misery imposed on workers. Aware of the divisions among Catholics, in his encyclical, Leo XIII mentions 3 much discussed issues. Can or should the state intervene in economic matters? Is there a right to a minimum wage? Can the workers organise among themselves? In these issues, the encyclical is not unbalanced, but rather opens the doors to innovative responses and initiatives. In 1903, Dehon again presents his role as a small phonograph of the papal encyclicals. But in reality, Dehon interprets Leo XIII in a way decisively in favour of workers' rights. He admits the possibility of workers' unions without the presence of their bosses, and asks for the intervention of the state in a series of social laws to protect workers against child labour and to introduce insurance against the risks of illness, disability, etc. He goes so far as to request that workers participate in the company's earnings because it is their work that contributes to it. There is no lack of appreciation from Leo XIII, both directly and through his Secretary of State, Cardinal Rampolla. The clearest sign of support for Dehon on the part of Leo XIII is undoubtedly his appointment as a consultor for the Congregation of the Index in 1897. But there is no lack of criticism of Dehon's positions, which some cardinals even describe as red. Perhaps the most intense collaboration between the 3 Leos takes place in the years 1897 and 1900 under the title of Christian Democracy. All 3 have the vision of re-Christianizing France, even in the face of many measures by the French governments against the clergy and religious. Although there is a more or less strong monarchical nostalgia in each of them, all 3 become more and more convinced. Only on constitutional grounds can the Republic be Christianized. This position, however, is far from being shared by all French Catholics, who partly dream of a return to a Christian monarchy. So in 1892, Pope Leo XIII writes an encyclical in French and for the French, with the title Au milieu des sollicitudes. This encyclical is an appeal to all French Catholics to overcome their differences, to accept the de facto government, the Republic, and to commit themselves within the constitutional framework to improve and indeed to Christianize the Republic. Leo Dehon and Leo Armel, especially in the years 1897 to 1900, engage in many initiatives to spread the papal vision. In part they do it within a movement that is at the same time also a programme, Christian democracy. Leo Armel is even called the father of this Christian democracy. In 1897, Dehon, on his part, is elected a member of the National Council of Christian Democracy. The culmination of this commitment are Dehon's Roman conferences, later published in the book The Christian Social Renewal. His appeals and articles are numerous. Convince the people that the Church is on their side. Convince them with a social and political programme that corresponds to their interests and to justice. The parliamentary elections in France are a disappointment for the three Leos. Only a few moderate or democratic Catholics are elected. The majority is made up of socialists and republicans with strong anti-clerical tendencies. The time has come to defend the interests of the Church in France. With the encyclical Graves de Communi Rei in 1901, Leo XIII reacts and redefines Christian democracy as social action, depriving it of any political dimension. Dehon, like Armel, remains faithful to his position, but increasingly withdraws from public commitment. Dehon is now more concerned with the government of the congregation, with recognition on the part of the Holy See, and defending his religious and his works against anti-congregationalist laws in France. The closing of the magazine The Reign of the Sacred Heart in Souls and in Society in 1903, the year of the death of Leo XIII, is emblematic. The three Leos, while having very different personalities as we have seen, collaborate as Pope, religious priest and lay entrepreneur. It is an understatement to say that it is a profound faith that unites them. It is, above all, a faith which believes in the private and public relevance of Christianity. A faith that under any form of government is called to make justice and Christian charity reign. A faith that makes it possible for all three not to fixate on nostalgia for the past, but to look ahead. This configuration of faith finds expression and is strengthened by all three belonging to the Franciscan tertiary movement. Here too, all three collaborate to renew this movement from a pious association to a protagonist for social reform. And there is more. All three are deeply devoted to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. In 1899, Leo XIII consecrates humankind to the Sacred Heart with the encyclical Annum Sacrum. Leo Armel puts his factory under the patronage of the Sacred Heart, whose feast is celebrated every year by all the members of the factory. For Dehon, we know, the Sacred Heart, the open heart of the crucified, is an icon and source of a love that transforms everything in view of his reign.
What we know of Father Dehon in his life is that almost from the beginning he showed an excess of energy that needed to find some kind of an outlet in his life. And it's perhaps only in the 1890s that he begins to have on the one hand, a reflection, but also more of a sense of what it is in his life. And he realized it somehow connected with the love of the Sacred Heart. He used excessive language to express this, and such as pure love, unconditional love. He talked about an inexhaustible love, immolation, total oblation. All of these texts, all of these words are excessive, also for us, impossible imperatives for us. And what occurred as a consequence, he needed to find an outlet, and he found the outlet in the political and economic life of his time. We too must, in our time, find an outlet for that excessive love of God in seeking the most abandoned, those who are most in need in our time, the outliers of our time.
We leave the last word to a very important figure of French Catholicism of Dehon's era, Georges Goyot, a member of the Académie Française. On the occasion of Dehon's death, he writes in the newspaper La Libre Belgique, "The apostolic zeal that Father Dehon recommended found good ground for expansion in France, in Val des Bois, in the religious and social works organised by Léo Armel. The successive periods of Father Dehon's life, his social period and his mystical period, seemed to unify and merge during the trips he loved to make to Val des Bois. It was there that, alongside the workers, alongside a Christian boss like Armel, the idea of a Christian social manual matured in Father Dehon's thought. This guided many youthful aspirants on the path of social action. I still hear Father Dehon at that time in Val des Bois developing the main lines of pontifical doctrine in front of young clerics and lay people who drew energy from these teachings. Majestic was his figure and rigorous his theology, but as soon as he began to speak, that tenderness of soul blossomed on his lips that he nourished through his daily meditations, with a constant contemplation of another tenderness, the tenderness of the God-made man. He was first of all a social apostle, the disciple of that heart which has compassion.